My father never told me he loved me, not once. Not when I was 5 years old and scraped my knee falling off my bicycle. Not when I came home from my first day of school. Not when I graduated high school or college or when I got married. And certainly not when I held my own son for the first time and called him to tell him the news. My name is Robert, and I'm 84 years old. For most of my life, I thought that silence meant something. I thought it meant he didn't care. But last month, I finally understood what it really meant, and it changed the way I see him, the way I see myself, and maybe the way you see the people in your own life who can't quite find the words. I grew up in a small house on Maple Street. My father was a carpenter. He'd leave before sunrise and come home with sawdust in his hair and calluses on his hands that never quite went away, even on Sundays. My mother was warm. She'd hug you and tell you she loved you without thinking twice about it. But my father was different. He was there. He fixed the roof when it leaked. He built my brother a treehouse. He drove me to every baseball game I ever played in, even though I was terrible. But he didn't talk much, and he never ever said those three words. As a child, you don't understand that some people speak in different languages. You just know what you feel. I felt like there was something wrong with me. I felt like I wasn't the kind of son who deserved to hear those words. I remember being 8 years old and watching my friend Tommy hug his dad after a baseball game, and his father would ruffle his hair and say, "I love you, buddy." I remember thinking, why doesn't Dad do that? What's wrong with me that he can't? So I spent my childhood trying to earn it. I kept my grades high. I stayed out of trouble. I became the kind of son I thought he'd be proud of, and he was proud of me. I could see it in his face, but he still couldn't say it. By the time I was a teenager, I'd given up expecting to hear it. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself that real men didn't need to hear their fathers say they loved them. That was a lie I told myself, but I was very good at believing it. I left home at 18. I went to college, got a job, started a family. I became a father myself, and I promised myself I would be different. I told my son I loved him every single day, sometimes twice a day. I hugged him. I was present in the way I wished my father had been. And I succeeded, I think. My son and I have a good relationship. But there was always this small, hard thing inside me that I carried. A little stone of doubt, a question I never quite asked out loud. Did Dad love me, or was he just obligated? My father died when I was 52. I was at work when I got the call. A stroke. He was gone before the ambulance even arrived. I didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't get to ask him anything. I didn't get to tell him that maybe, somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being angry about the silence. I just got his absence, and all the words I'd never heard, and the terrible permanence of it. After he died, my mother lived for another 11 years. We'd talk on the phone, and sometimes she'd say things about him, small things. She told me he'd always asked about me when he came home from work. She told me he kept a photograph of me and my brother on his tool bench. She told me he'd been proud of the man I'd become. But these were things she was telling me, not things he'd said himself. It was like getting a letter translated into a language I could understand, but it still wasn't in his handwriting. Last month I was cleaning out my mother's house. She passed away about 3 years ago now, and I'd been putting off going through her things. I found a box in the closet of her bedroom. It was full of old photographs and letters, and at the bottom of the box there was an envelope. My name was written on it in my father's handwriting. It had never been opened. The postage was dated 1989, which would have been about 2 years before he died. My hands were shaking when I opened it. I sat down on the floor right there in my mother's closet, and I read what my father had written to me. He wrote that he'd been thinking about our relationship. He said he knew he wasn't good at expressing his feelings. He said his own father had never told him he loved him either, and that he'd grown up thinking that was just how men were supposed to be. He wrote that he'd always been proud of me, that he loved watching me play baseball, even though I wasn't any good at it. He said he was proud of the man I'd become, of the father I was to my son. And then he wrote something that broke me. He wrote, "I'm writing this letter because I want you to know that I love you. I'm writing it instead of saying it because I'm not sure I can say the words and not cry, and I don't know how to explain that to you. But you should know that every choice I've made, every sacrifice, every moment I've been there for you has been because I love you. And I'm sorry it took me this long to tell you. I'm sorry I couldn't say it with my voice. He never sent the letter. My mother found it, I think. Maybe she asked him why he hadn't sent it, and maybe he just couldn't bring himself to do it. Maybe he thought he'd write it again someday when he felt stronger. Or maybe he thought he had more time. None of that matters now. What matters is that I finally have proof of something I spent my whole life doubting. And what matters even more is that I finally understand that his silence wasn't rejection. It was fear. It was limitation. It was a man trapped by the way he was raised, trying his best to show up for his son the only way he knew how. I think about my grandchildren now, and I wonder what they'll think about their grandfather. I think about all the things I say to my own son, all the easy words I've given him that my father couldn't give me. And I'm grateful for that. But I'm also grateful for my father now in a way I never was before. I'm grateful that he tried. I'm grateful that he left, even without sending it. I'm grateful that my mother kept that letter, because it gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. It gave me permission to love him without needing him to be perfect. It gave me permission to understand that sometimes the people who love us most are just doing the very best they can with what they know. If you're out there watching this and there's someone in your life who can't quite say what you need to hear, I want you to know something. It doesn't always mean they don't feel it. Sometimes it means they're scared. Sometimes it means they were never taught how. Sometimes it means they're fighting against every instinct they inherited from the people who raised them. And that doesn't make it okay exactly. Your need to hear those words is real. Your pain at not hearing them is valid. But maybe, just maybe, there's a way to hold both things at the same time. To grieve what wasn't said, and to honor the person anyway, because they were trying, because they showed up, because in their own imperfect way, they loved you. That's what I'm learning at 84. That's what my father finally taught me, even though it took a letter written 35 years ago to do it.